For Gresham House Forestry, which is an investment company who invests in various sustainable subjects, including forestry and wind farms and solar parks and battery storage and sustainable housing and infrastructure. I'm here specifically to talk about forestry. I think I've got a critic on the front row, so...
Well, not sustainable.
So I think I'm here maybe not to defend everything that forestry does. I recognise that it's not necessarily perfect completely, but I would like to put forward a sort of presentation here that hopefully sort of shows the good things that forestry can give us.
Did it get started?
I'll just start anyway and we'll catch up. And I prepared for much more than 10 minutes, so sorry if I skip through some of these things. So just to sort of give a bit of context, the UK has 13% woodland cover and Scotland has 19%. If you look specifically at Argyll and Bute, we have about 30% woodland cover, so we are comparatively highly forested compared with elsewhere in the UK. And Argyll and Bute, that's on the same sort of level, 30%, as places like Moray and South Ayrshire in Scotland. 85% of woodland in Argyll is conifers, so it's a very high percentage of plantation forest in Argyll. And the majority of that is Sitka spruce, which is a non-native tree species from North America, with other elements of other species, but the vast majority is Sitka spruce. But interestingly, if you look at the UK, 82% of what we consumed over the last few years in terms of wood consumed in the UK was actually imported. So we have this massive imbalance in the UK of how much timber we produce and how much we actually use as a nation. We're one of the largest net importers of wood worldwide, probably the second or third largest importers of wood. And Argyll, because of how much woodland cover it has, is a significant contributor to the wood that we produce. In the UK, it produces about a fifth of all the softwood that the UK produces. So just going into some of the sort of management things that we have in our forests. Management is mainly underpinned by two main standards. The UK Forestry Standard, which is a state-run organisation that oversees how we manage forests, and also a voluntary system which is called the UK Woodland Assurance Scheme, which is undertaken by forest and woodland owners, but they don't have to do that, but many choose to do that. And that is independently audited to ensure and check that those forests are being managed well and being managed sustainably. And it's that audit that produces the little stamp that we would get on the back of a piece of wood or a piece of paper that we see that says FSC or PEFC. In the UK, it comes from the UK Woodland Assurance Scheme. And those two standards basically say that all the ground, all the timber and forest that is felled in the UK has to be replanted. So whenever we get a felling permission to cut some trees somewhere, we have to replant it. And there are a few exceptions, but not many. And one would be if there was an area of deep peat and we wanted to restore the peatland, we could get a felling permission to fell those trees without having to replant them. But by and large, once a forest is there, it is there forever in one form or other, whether it's a conifer species or a broadleaf species. And these two standards outline how we interact as an industry with various different subjects. So it talks about how we respond to climate change and how we can contribute positively to climate change. It talks about how we develop biodiversity and how we protect species and protect biodiversity. It talks about how we interact with people and society, how we generate jobs and how we avoid negative impacts with local communities. And it also talks about how we manage forests so that they fit in with the landscape, how we protect water, how we protect soils, and how we protect the historic environment. So these two standards really underpin everything that we do. Sort of digging into the detail of some of that, one of the things that those standards say now is that at least 15% of the forest that we manage has to be managed for as a primary objective, which is biodiversity. So that could mean including areas of native woodland. It could mean growing trees for longer than we would normally do that, so that the trees are providing a different age and a different size of tree. Or it could mean managing an area where we say we're never going to fell those trees, that those areas are going to last forever, and we call those natural reserves. And also we have maximum amounts of a single species now. So whereas in the past we might have planted 100% sitka spruce in one forest, now the maximum is 75% of a single species, which is still high. But the point is that we have to, whenever we plant a new forest or whenever we fell a forest and replant it, we have to ensure that there is a mixture of different species going in there. And also at least 10% open ground, which provides different habitats than a habitat that has trees on completely. And also at least 5% native trees. And managed forests provide for lots of different things that don't happen actually in unmanaged forests. And that could be the management of pests and invasive species. And here, managing deer is important actually. And managing things like rhododendron and other species. And also managed forests are important for supporting the rural economy. We provide many more jobs and livelihoods than for woodland that is unmanaged. And also lots of supporting jobs for that. And also by building forest roads, okay already, by building forest roads and building footpaths, we open up these forests for people to use, which is good for human health and well-being. So sort of echoing Roger's thing, trees use photosynthesis as this amazing technology that people have sort of forgotten about and we're rediscovering now, and they've got the ability to take CO2 and lock carbon away and then release oxygen. They're part of government policies to achieve net zero, and the target is 30,000 hectares of new woodland creation per year in the UK. And over the past few years we've increased it, but we're still only at about 13 to 14,000. So we're not even halfway to the target that the government has set. Now, there's a few things there that sort of underpin that, and a lot of that is done by the private sector, and so grant schemes are important for that. but the grant schemes can be a little bit prescriptive and a little bit complicated, which is maybe one reason that woodland creation isn't going as fast as it could possibly do. Another thing is the Woodland Carbon Code, which has been set up to encourage... Oh, we're up. Sorry, I didn't realise. The Woodland Carbon Code's there to encourage woodland creation, and I'm maybe not going into the mechanism of that right now, but you can ask later. But there is still a perception that commercial plantation forestry is bad for the environment. I'd like to put forward a counter argument, if that's okay. So I've got a graph here that shows what happens actually in a plantation forestry. So the Woodland Carbon Code gives carbon credits, which would be along the dotted red line there. But in a typical forest in Argyll, we would grow a commercial crop until about 35 years old, and at which point we would harvest those trees. And it doesn't just mean that the carbon disappears and it goes back into the atmosphere. Actually, most of the carbon that is sequestered by those trees is harvested and put into buildings and locked away. That carbon is locked for a long period into the future. And a small amount actually is burnt as biomass, and that is released and goes back into the atmosphere. But a lot of it is locked away. And then we replant the forest, and it happens again, and we replant it again, and it happens again. So over time, we're sequestering a lot more carbon than the Woodland Carbon Code would have you believe, and also a lot more carbon than a native woodland that is never harvested. We produce lots of different products from our forests, and the main one really is building products, which is such an important part of what we do. And those building products can lock carbon away, but they can also replace other building materials. The steel up there that emitted a lot more carbon than anything close to what wood can do. And so wood is very important in three ways. It is sequestering carbon, it's locking carbon up, and it's also replacing other high emissions materials when we use it. And so sort of looking forward a little bit, we can see that engineered wood products can now be produced, and that allows. The top picture is Helensburgh swimming pool, which opened recently. It uses glulam beams, which is an engineered wood product which can be used to basically glue bits of wood together and produce extra strength for that wood, much more than the wood itself if it came straight out of the forest. And so what we're seeing is we can now build bigger and bigger buildings out of wood, which can lock more and more carbon up in those buildings. So the building on the left there is the highest, the tallest wooden building in the world, 85 metres in Norway, and there are plans for a 350 metre building in Japan using wood. So hopefully that sort of gave a bit of a different slant on forestry that we see all around us, and hopefully we can see the importance of it as a land use.